Hi, good evening, everybody. If we can settle down. We waited a few minutes to see, and we're translating this in Spanish, so we're going to try to go slow. We were waiting a few minutes because there were a number of cars circling the parking lot. As you know, it's hard to park close in here, so we wanted to give everybody a chance to come in. So we're going to start and get this thing going. So good evening and welcome to our community forum on school safety and security. We're here tonight because I'm hearing in our community that recent national headlines are terrifying us and that we're concerned that it could happen here. So far in 2018, there have been 9 shootings on school campuses across the country. Keep in mind, in the United States, there are over 26,000 public secondary schools and almost 11,000 private secondary schools. So we're talking about 9 shootings in all those schools. Some of the recent national headlines, as you're all aware, have read, starting in January 20th, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, January 22nd, Italy, Texas, January 23rd, Benton, Kentucky, January 31st in Philadelphia, February 1st in Los Angeles, February 5th in Maryland, February 9th in Nashville, February 14th was Parkland, Florida, and then yesterday, February 28th, there was a shooting on a campus in Georgia. So we're here tonight because of these headlines, right? And when I'm out there in the community and I'm talking to all of you, this is what I'm hearing, is that we're afraid of these headlines. They terrify us, and we're afraid that it could happen here. So they all cause us to pause and ask us, what if this happens in our community? That being said, we're not here to deliberate these tragic events. What we're here tonight to do is discuss what effects these headlines have on our community, and as how we, my distinguished panel and I, take every threat seriously, and we work cooperatively, collaboratively together, and we immediately and thoroughly begin to investigate every threat that comes into our schools and our community. We investigate these threats within our existing framework and our sets of systems and laws that are put in place to provide the safety and security to your children in the schools. What's just as important to me is that we're also here to listen. We want to listen to what is in your hearts and minds. At this time, I'd like my command staff that's here in the room to please stand. Come on, Tom, stand up. This is my senior leadership team. You guys still stay standing for a minute. This is my senior leadership team who I trust and depend on every day, that we're in the nerve center making decisions, when information comes in. I would ask you to please stay standing while I ask our school resource officers, explorers, and other law enforcement in the room to please stand up. We also have in the room fire and emergency personnel. If you guys could stand up. Huh? Yeah. We have folks from our communications center, if those people could stand up. We have school officials. If you guys could all stand up. We have officers of the court in the room. We have elected officials. We have county and town senior leadership. If you guys could all just stand up for a minute. So I'd like everyone in the auditorium, hang on for 1 second, you guys, keep standing. What I'd like everyone in the auditorium to take notice of the people standing up, because this is your community support system right here. These are the folks in the trenches every day watching out for the safety and security of the children in our schools. This show of unity demonstrates, how important the safety and security of your children are to us and to this community. So please, if you could just sit down, that'd be great. Thank you. I'd like now introduce your undersheriff, Joel Cochran, who will explain the format of this evening, and who's also going to moderate this discussion. So, Joel?
Good evening. My voice is a little bit dry, so I'm going to do my best to get this out. And so thank you, Sheriff. I want to take a few minutes and describe the purpose for tonight's meeting and our format, which is an open panel discussion. But first, our purpose for being here tonight is we feel it's important to describe the actions that we take, sometimes daily, within our existing framework and our local systems. And we also are here, as the sheriff said, to hear and respond to your questions and your concerns. One thing we're not here tonight to do is engage in a debate about policy matters. Many of us aren't policymakers. We enforce the law. So arming teachers and gun control and topics like that, we're really not here to do that. Those are conversations with your national and your state leadership, your elected leadership. And so that'd be great. We think it's important to talk about the work we conduct daily to protect our community and specifically our school campuses. This work often goes unnoticed until it comes into the public view when it is in a newspaper article or on social media. But we live in an open community, and our schools are open campuses, and we want them to be that way. But this means that any person can take advantage of this freedom and can do a harmful plan and put it in motion. And when that happens, when that happens without our knowledge, then we get sent on a 911 call that sets our priorities, and our priorities are to protect life and to stabilize the situation. And that's scary for all of us, but that is an emergency situation. So tonight's discussion, we would like to focus and have you hear why it's vitally important to engage in the work of investigating, interrupting, and disrupting events before they happen, and why that is so important. Here are the actions that we take locally to interrupt and to disrupt. We consider threats and threatening comments seriously, and we take them seriously, as you see in our community. We monitor social media, tips, threats, and other comments that are on social media networks or come in through Safe to Tell. We maintain a presence in the school. Presence is a mission for us, and it is an important mission with our school resource officers. Through them, we create relationships and we create trust, and we get ahead of events before the 911 call happens. We respond immediately, and you see in our community sometimes how quickly we respond, and in the morning all of a sudden there's a flurry of information and questions, and we're out doing our job at night. We investigate threats thoroughly. We arrest and we detain when appropriate. That's our job. We refer to the district attorney and to the courts, and that is also our job. So here's our structure tonight. In a moment, our panelists will introduce themselves and provide an opening comment. As I shared earlier, we're eager for your questions and your comments. So in the room are our explorers. These are high school students that participate in our Explorer program. They're in the blue shirts. So we have index cards for you, and we have some writing instruments. And if you'd like to pass a question forward, this is the format we'll follow, and we'll take your questions, and I'll organize them to kind of the right silo of information up in front. And so the explorers will pass the cards out. They'll also collect the cards. We've got a little process to, hopefully that's not too clunky. And so we'll get the questions out to the panel. And so now I'd like to turn it over to our panelists and have them do their personal introductions and their opening statements. Start with Heidi.
Hi.
I think you're on.
Is it on? Yeah. All right, can you hear me? Thank you. My name is Heidi McCollum. I'm the Assistant District Attorney in the 5th Judicial District. It comprises 4 counties, Eagle, Summit, Lake, and Clear Creek. So we run the I-70 corridor from Evergreen to Glenwood Canyon. We have a court in El Jebel Basalt and also Lake County. We have 4 separate offices. one in Georgetown, one in Breckenridge, one in Leadville, and one in Eagle. As part of our job as district attorneys, one of the mandates we have is to do justice. And in prosecuting adults, the ultimate goal is vastly different from when juveniles are in the justice system. And what I would like to make everyone aware of today, and His Honor can certainly expand on this more if you have any questions, I'll put you on the spot, is that in the juvenile justice system, whether it's the defense counsel, whether it's His Honor, whether it's the prosecutor, whether it's a guardian ad litem, which is an attorney appointed by the court to look after the interests of the child, whether it's the probation department, we all have the exact same goal, and that is mandated by the statute. And that goal is to do what is in the best interest of the child. Now, we come at it from different angles, but we all have the same end result in mind. And last year in Summit County, there were a grand total of 19 cases, 19 juvenile cases that went through the system. Some of those Judge Thompson appeared on, and some of those Judge Romeo appeared on. And ultimately, what we want to do is to not have kids in the justice system. What we want to do is to divert them. We have a program at the DA's office, it's called diversion. And it's a way to target kids who might be making poor decisions, who might be vulnerable, and ultimately, we all work together, law enforcement, the courts, the probation department, the school, mental health facilities, or the community resources, and we all work together, again, to do this, what's in the best interest of the child. The last thing I'd like to say is that what is paramount for our office in any case that we work with is public safety. And that public safety comes into play more so when we are working with what I would call vulnerable populations. A vulnerable population, I would consider juveniles, the elderly, the disabled. And so I want to thank everyone for coming here tonight, for participating. Thank you, Sheriff Fitzsimons, for putting this together, and for my panel members as well.
Good evening. My name is Mark Thompson. I'm the Chief Judge for the 5th Judicial District, which is the 4 counties that Heidi outlined. I also happen to sit in Breckenridge primarily. I want to just touch briefly on a couple of things so that you have some context for some of the rest of the panel's comments. As we go down here, the next 2 gentlemen, obviously the sheriff, and we have a gentleman from the FBI, and then we move more towards school and the mental health side of things. The reason that the makeup of this panel is important is because it kind of describes how we interface with one another. In the justice system, we're governed by the Children's Code. Obviously, in the Florida situation, you're talking about a 19-year-old. 19-year-old is an adult in the eyes of the law, but most of what our focus on and what we're going to talk about tonight has to do with children. And the justice system really starts, as far as the courts are concerned, around age 12 and running through that age 18. And what's important about that is the Children's Code starts with that premise that Heidi said earlier. We're talking about the best interests of the children or the child involved. And it's a multifaceted approach. So if a case is initiated and a child does end up in the court system, that is an opportunity where our community literally comes together around that child to identify what the issues are and create a framework to provide appropriate assistance and intervention with that child so that the child's interests are protected, but also so that the community's interests are protected. The justice system has a lot of aspects. We have mental health cases, we have juvenile justice cases, we have adult criminal cases as well. But when we're talking about kids in the justice system, it's a very different view, and it has a different set of priorities. But one of the things that you should all be aware of is that it is a system that doesn't really sleep. When law enforcement takes a juvenile into custody, it's a 24-hour operation. We have people on staff that are available 24/7 to evaluate decisions about detaining juveniles. Judges are on call. just like doctors overnight, people call us and ask us, what should we do with this child? And we have a very detailed screening process. And when there are legitimate safety concerns, we do detain children, and then that process gets started. There are due process concerns. Obviously, if we detain a child, then there are hearings and things like that. And they're all, one of the, oft noted things about the justice system is that it moves slowly. When we're talking about kids, exactly the opposite is true. The system is deliberately and intentionally by law designed to be swift. Hearings have to happen within 48 hours of a child coming into custody. Things happen quickly. There are backstops to ensure that the child is represented and has a legal team around him or her, but also a person who's looking after their interest that doesn't have a specific legal role. The other important thing about the justice system and kids is if a child does interface with the justice system, they interface with their parent as well. Parental responsibility is a big piece of children and the justice system, and we don't work in a vacuum. And that's something that's going to be really important as we develop discussion points this evening and hear from you about your concerns, is how can parents be involved and how do things happen as far as interventions are concerned. I'm happy to get into details about the juvenile justice system to the extent it becomes relevant this evening, but at least, that's kind of the overview of where I come from on this issue. And I just want to thank the sheriff for putting this together. So, Sheriff?
Good evening. My name is Todd Sanstead, and I'm a supervisory special agent for the FBI. I don't know if you've heard of the FBI. We've done a good job of staying out of the news lately. But it is a pleasure to be here with you tonight. I'm looking forward to our dialogue and really hope that you take advantage of this captive audience and ask the questions that are on your minds, and hopefully we'll provide you some good answers. Let me give you a little overview of what I do and who I am and what we are as far as Northern Colorado is concerned. My responsibilities are to supervise four now, offices in Northern Colorado. We have one in Loveland and Fort Collins. We have one in Boulder, and then we have, more specifically again, addressing more of your needs, we have an office in Glenwood Springs that is responsible for doing investigations here in Summit County, and then one in Grand Junction. And while I'm on the topic of the Glenwood Springs office, I'm thankful that tonight our senior resident agent from that office, Chris Hilgers, is here. Chris, if you'd stand back up. I know you were recognized earlier, but it's always good when the FBI gets some applause every now and then, so it's nice to have you here. But we do have two people that are stationed up here full-time and interact with the law enforcement community here. And that's kind of one of the things I want to underscore in my comments tonight and give you a feel for what kind of relationships exist and how the FBI participates in those relationships. So one of the things I'm most thankful for being a supervisor of a resident agency. Now, what is that? That's government speak, right? So our main headquarters is down in Denver. So they have a huge office and a lot of people that work out of there. But every so often, we put, about every 70, 100 miles, we plop another office just so we can react quicker to crimes that are going on in that area. I've been in a resident agency, which is what Glenwood Springs is, virtually my entire career. I'm extremely thankful for that because resident agencies solely rely on relationships with their law enforcement partners in those counties and those cities. So I've probably been more of a deputy sheriff or a police officer than I've been an FBI agent in my career because that's who's raised me. I've been able to go and work in those communities and with those departments, and it's been the most exceptional experience that I could have imagined. So I'm very thankful for that. But understand that the FBI does return the favor. While we're getting tremendous assistance from the law enforcement community, for example, here in Summit County, we're also going to do our very best to provide intelligence, investigative support, whatever they need, when they need it. And they don't need it often because you have extremely professional folks up here. But when they do, we're going to be there. And I think that's important for you to understand that this is a one big family type of topic, this one we're going to talk about tonight. It doesn't just affect You know, the sheriff's office or the PD or the FBI, it affects everybody at the same time. And I'm a father of two. Okay, I've got two in schools. I'm very thankful for all the work that the Sheriff's Department does in our community to make that school safe. In fact, one of the trivia questions I always throw out is, at our school, the person who gets asked to deliver diplomas more than any other person in the school is the school resource officer, like 3 to 1. And that shows the kind of cool relationship that schools have with law enforcement. But that relationship is so important these days, right? You see all the things that are going on in TV and the newspapers, what happened in Florida and some of the other areas around the country. And you need to know that this relationship and our focus on attacking this problem didn't start 2 weeks ago. It's been going on for a long time. It's not our first time sitting in the room together. So we have been working and laboring toward making this a safe picture for everybody in the room. But I totally understand why we need to sit down and tell you about that, why we need to have that conversation tonight, because it's in the front page. It's terrible what's going on. There's no way around it. It is a terrible thing that we're experiencing in our country, not only in our schools, but then we've had some violent acts toward law enforcement as well here in Colorado. So we're thrilled to be part of the dialogue. We're hopeful to be part of the solution. And we're going to make sure that we endeavor to do all of those things. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Cassie Camo. I'm a counseling psychologist. I'm the Chief Behavioral Health Officer at the Summit Community Care Clinic, which is a local integrated healthcare clinic right here in Frisco, Colorado, and all throughout the county. I probably have to first say, I never in my wildest dreams imagined I'd be on a panel with an FBI agent. So just once I get that out there, I can then go on. Right? So, yay me. Yeah, great. I'm going to get yeah. And I wore the brightest color here, so awesome. I'm not in law enforcement or legal anything. I'm a mental health professional. And I've spent the last 6 years running mental health programs in the schools here, outpatient mental health programs called school-based health centers here in the schools in Summit County. And those have been programs that have been incredibly well received in our community, in our school district. They're also programs through all facets of health, so physical health, mental health, and oral health, that have been widely growing in the community, not just our county, all of the surrounding counties, and then nationwide. It's a model that really works to serve people where they're at, to access kids and families so that they don't have to leave school to get the services they need. We know that that's a big problem. And so for the past 6 years, we have that model here in Summit County, and if you didn't know it, I'm glad you know it now, because it's something that's exceptional in our county. It's something that's exceptional nationwide, and we have a really robust and prolific school-based health center model right in our area that's open to everybody. So I'm predominantly in charge of mental health services for that programming. I'm a generalist in terms of psychology. I'm not an expert on the events that we're talking about in terms of safety and guns and mental health here tonight. I think the main role that I play here tonight is to make sure that part of what happens in this forum is an opportunity for people to be able to express what scares them, what concerns them, what confuses them, what doesn't make sense, both on a personal level and on a community level. One of the main driving forces of putting this forum together was not only to reassure everybody that safety is managed and handled and we've got it, but also to say, what are you scared of? How can we help? What concerns are going on for you or your families or your children that we don't know about, that we want to come together to address as a community? And so I think my role here tonight is to partially facilitate some of that and make sure that all of these stiffs in their suits and their, don't lose sight of that, because that's the foundation of what brings us here. we can reassure you with words to no end, but we really need to make sure that we're also listening and hearing and allowing our community and the family and the conglomerate of people here tonight to have somewhat of a cathartic experience. Problems and things that concern you are not all going to be resolved tonight, but the hope is we can get some of that out on the table and then continue to work together as a small, tight-knit, caring community to make things better. So thanks for having me, and look forward to the discussion.
My name is Travis Avery. I work for the school district, and my official title is Emergency Response Coordinator, and I'd like everybody to say that 5 times real quick. So my job has been in place for about 8 years, and it came about, and frankly, it's kind of a rare position in a smaller district such as ours, but it came about because the district felt the need here with additional state requirements, which often, as we know, come with not much dollars attached, but additional state requirements to improve emergency preparedness in schools Colorado-wide. And so our district applied for a federal grant and received that about 8 years ago, and then the district has maintained my position once that grant ran out. And the original idea, as I mentioned, was about emergency preparedness, and whether it's for a big event, kind of what brings us here tonight, or about making sure we're consistent in terms of how we respond when it's a snow day. You know, it runs, that emergency preparedness piece runs the gamut of small kind of things we don't even really think of as emergencies, but do change our operations, all the way through a large traumatic event that we're fortunate not to have happen here in Summit to this point. What this job has evolved into, and I think I try and become a resource and facilitate with our district, and this speaks to, I think, what the legal end of our panel was talking about, is when we have students in crisis, and maybe they make a bad decision about that crisis, and that brings our behavioral health folks into play too, that student's not going away. You know, we're public educators. The students have a right to public education. I think as a mission of the school district, our staff and educators feel real passionately about that we can educate every student, even the ones that present with challenges. And so it's really important that in my job that we've been able to connect with the community agencies, and whether that's law enforcement for that response to an event, but what happens when that student returns to school? And how do we connect with the legal system? And it's not just me, it's building administrators. It's, you know, our whole team has different roles in that. How do we then give additional services that if a student requires behavioral health supports, and provide that system within the school setting so that that student can return to education and their education can be supported? Because I think, again, small community, our students that have some challenges, they're not going anywhere, those families aren't going anywhere, and we need them to be successful members of the community as they grow up. So that's been something that my job has kind of evolved to include, is making sure within the school district that we've got systems in place and are trying to do a good job to, one, maintain that safety and security for all students and all staff and visitors into our facilities, but also making sure that when we do have situations and those students are coming back to us, how do we support that student to make sure they're successful long term and hopefully, frankly, turn their life around a little bit.
Okay, great. So as you're putting your questions, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna introduce myself.
Sorry, Sheriff.
I guess we just assume we know who I am, right? Anyways, pretty cool, the panel, right? I brought these folks together, and what's important for you to know is that, all of these people here, we are all on speed dial together, right? Any of us can call any of us at any time, any day, any time of day or night when there's an issue or we need to consult on something. The bigger part of it is that you don't see is there's a lot of people behind each one of these representatives that we're also on speed dial. All the people that stood up in this room, right? We all consult all the time. I talk to my police chiefs all the time. There's 5 other chiefs here of 5 other jurisdictions in our county, right? I've got the biggest piece of the pie, but we also have 5 other jurisdictions. We all work together is the point. all of us, all the time. You know, I often talk about how we all live, work, play in this fishbowl, right? This is just another part of the fishbowl that we're swimming in. And, you know, it's not all, all of our circles aren't always about school threats, school safety. I work with a school district on a myriad of other projects. I work with Cassie and her folks and other mental health folks, all mental health people in this community. The FBI, I work with Chris and his partner Matt. We work with them all the time, as the other police chiefs do. Judge Thompson, in his office every morning, consulting about something. I consider him a good friend and a confidant. You know, every sheriff needs a good confidant. And of course, the district attorney's office, Heidi or Bruce, they're always available, as the judge said too, always available. I've never called anybody in this room, whether it be from the school district to mental health folks to the FBI to anybody in the courts or the DA's office where someone didn't answer the phone. Never called a police chief where they didn't answer the phone and said, where are we meeting? What do we need? What other resources do we need? So you need to understand that, and when you start thinking about your questions tonight, you know, consider that, you know, we got this. We really care about this community. My kids grew up here. My kids both went through the Summit School District and graduated from Summit High. They still live here. My kids are part of this community. There's a crisis in this community. My family's involved. So is everyone else's family. We all have family here. So, with no further ado,
With no further ado.
unless anyone's confused about who I am, we can cover that again.